To inbound, gets it into Shackle. Shackle to Flynn for the win. It's won! Malachi Flynn! 2-3, backhanded by the shortstop. Blum got a hurry, got him! Yes! 479! Trevor Hoffman has become the all-time saves leader in Major League Baseball history, and they're all chasing him.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into episode 8 of Connected by Seams podcast. I'm Seth Smith, along with Garrett Smith and Danny Espinoza. How are y'all doing? We apologize for the bit of delay between episodes here. The trio has been a little bit busy between family time, vacation, life, just things getting in the way. But here we are. We're excited to be back and bring you another episode, this one with two-time Emmy winner and ESPN broadcaster Steve Quis. I've been fortunate enough to work with Steve just a little bit in my broadcasting path, and he's awesome. Steve has also spent time the voice of the Padres and the Angels, 6 years as in the big leagues as a broadcaster, which is pretty awesome, and he's had a good story along the way. So before we dive into all that, guys, I know, as mentioned, we've been a little busy. What you guys been up to? I know G and I have been in Newport. Maybe dive into kind of what you guys have been up to.
Yeah, shit. I took a long drive out to my farm out here in Colorado, but it's about it. Took a 10-hour drive with the family, get away from California, get out of California with all the crap going on there. It's kind of nice to get away from the crap. So we came out to the farm and just been hunting a little bit, fishing a little bit. Boys love it. Wife loves it out here. So really just taking the time to get away to a happy place.
Yeah, some of your posts that you've been posting, I mean, it's not hard to see why you're out there.
Yeah.
I mean, you're wide open spaces. It's beautiful. That's amazing. Yeah, and stuff like you mentioned, we've been spending our time in Newport. Families getting a beach house, or we've been doing it. What is it, like 67 years or something like that?
Just throw a number out there, a high one, and that's it.
Yeah.
Long time.
It's been good, though. I mean, dude, the beaches are packed. They are packed, and apparently stealing all the Wi-Fi from every location, and we haven't been able to record anything down there.
I've been trying to stay away from that W word for freaking weeks now, man. That Wi-Fi has been a trouble. I was out in front of a Starbucks trying to make it work. You guys have been in your cars trying to make it work. It's been a mess, but we promise this episode is worth it. It was a heck of a time catching up with Steve and kind of just sharing his success along the way. But on that note, this is probably a good time to give that shout out. If you guys follow us on Instagram, you may have seen the post on our story of the recording location on the balcony of on the rooftop of just an absolute gorgeous place in Newport Beach, California. And probably a good time to shout out Mike and Debbie Felix. Thank you guys for opening your doors, allowing that to happen. And our brother Ryan, G and I, our brother Ryan Bright lived on that street for a little bit, got to know the Felix family, and we took advantage of another connection.
Working the connections.
And spoiled,
like
yeah. So shout out to Ryan as well. We know he's a listener of the fan. So everyone involved to make that happen was awesome. In the midst of a panic of what the hell are we going to do. Worked out pretty awesome. So again, we're excited to get into the interview, and we'll send it to the interview now with ESPN broadcaster Steve Quis. Hello, everybody, and welcome into today's episode of Connected by Seams podcast. I'm Seth Smith, along with Garrett Smith and Danny Espinoza. And today we are joined by the former voice of the San Diego Padres, Los Angeles Angels, a two-time Emmy winner, and ESPN broadcaster Steve Quis. How we doing, Steve? Thanks for joining the show.
Thanks for having me, fellas. I appreciate it. I can't wait for the chat. Should we get it out of the way?
Yeah, we have to. We have to.
The four of us have Harrisburg Senators hats on, and I got the old school one from the 1999 season.
And to complete that, Danny played for the Senators. So
there we go.
It all the full square now.
Nice.
which is so cool.
So we're going to be trending big time in whatever that area code is. I don't even know. What's the area code out there?
Oh, shoot. Put me on the spot.
Maybe
703 or something.
Maybe we'll get something from like Hershey out there.
There you go.
I'll take it.
717. I'll look it up as we're chatting.
Yeah. Well, Steve and I go back a little bit. I've been fortunate enough to work alongside Steve and also firsthand look to see you work at your craft. It's an absolute pleasure. So excited to have you on. You yourself, a local guy like us, also from the Orange County area.
Yes.
Grew up in Fullerton. What was that like for us? I loved being right where we were. It was the hub of, you had sports everywhere. You had Disneyland, the beach, all that. I imagine it was the same for you growing up.
Yeah, and I would go to the beach all the time, and then I would wish that I would be at Anaheim Stadium, announcing games. And now as I get closer to 50, I'm like, when I go to a baseball game, I'm like, man, I wish I was at the beach, huh? And Danny would appreciate it. You went to Modern Day, and you're a little bit younger. Well, you're a lot younger than I am. But when I was, playing, I played high school baseball at Fullerton. And in that area right there, where you had El Dorado and Esperanza and Los Alamitos and those high schools the middle infield of one of our competitors was Nevin at shortstop and, Brett Boone at second base, right? And his brother Aaron was at Canyon. And you had, I think, I was trying to count, I got at least 8 guys out of that. It was called the Empire League then.
Yep.
That pretty significantly for Major League Baseball. The worst guy might have been like Mike Kelly, the Los Al center fielder who played like only 3 years, for goodness sakes, in the big leagues. So there was a lot of good guys. So that was fun to be in that area, the hotbed of baseball and sports. And, we had moved from New Jersey in the late 70s, and I was a Yankee fan and then developed into an Angel fan. And then, just like everyone else in Orange County, right, just go to the beach, ride the OCTD down Beach Boulevard, right to the beach or Newport where you're at now. So it was a lot of fun, man. I really cherish those days.
I figured you could probably relate to that, huh, G? Hopping on the bus.
Oh, all the time. me and my brother and a couple buddies, we would always take the bus down there. We had that route down to a Science.
Yep. 40th
I think
Street.
It was bus 30 or whatever. Did you bring your surfboard and all that good stuff?
Oh yeah, we had that. We had the chair, backpacks. We had packed lunch. We had the full 9. We took that just about every day.
Yeah, it was a great place for high school football. We would play a lot in those days because people didn't, high school. Not every high school had its own stadium. So at Fullerton we hosted with Troy, and in our league we had 6 teams but only 3 stadiums. So we'd go down on Thursday night. We'd always watch Modern Day and Servite play, or Servite Crespi or whatever down at the Santa Ana Bowl. So it was a lot of fun. And then you could watch, other games on Saturday. So there was high school football Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And so I was, as a sports nut, I was everywhere watching everything,
Yeah.
You being from the East Coast now, were your favorite players East Coast guys, or were they, when you moved to California, was it like, the Angels guys are your new guys now? Or are you always East Coast?
It went quickly from like Reggie Jackson, right? Because when I was, 1977, the guy hit 3 home runs in one game right against the Dodgers. So I love Reggie. And then as I, came to California, I love like Brian Downing. You remember Brian Downing?
You're gonna get some fans if our family listens to this.
Well, the interesting thing, has anybody ever looked at how long Brian Downing actually played Major League Baseball? The guy played, and you'll appreciate this, Danny. The guy played 22 years of Major League Baseball.
It's unheard of now.
Yeah, we almost had 400 at-bats and played in like 140 games every year.
Oh, man.
And it was funny, on Twitter, probably like a year ago today, I think it was last summer, I just sent on Twitter, I was like, I wonder what Brian Downing's doing today. Anybody remember? And somebody said, oh, man, he lives next to me, and I'm going to go over and knock on his door. And turns out he's in Texas now, but he lived next door to somebody in Yorba Linda when he was playing, and now he's in Texas doing something. And so I really like those guys that lasted, as long as they did. And, loved Ryan Carew and got to see Nolan Ryan pitch.
Yeah.
And so, and then it became Angel guys, through the 80s, for goodness sakes. And then 86 was just a heartbreaker when they, were the Donnie Moore game and all that good stuff. So it's just.
Oh, yeah.
Well, as we're on the topic, I was walking by, as we were talking before the show, I'm in Newport right now, and I was walking by one of the establishments, and out comes Chuck Finley. I didn't say it. I double took, and I was like, Chuck? Like, I just said it, like, kind of turned my head in case it wasn't him, and he, like, turned around. He turned around, and I was like, you're the man. You're the man. And he kept walking, hopped in his big old truck, and got out of here. I was like, like, I wish I could have. I was in an Angel tank top. Like, I was dressed for the moment.
He's a big dude, huh?
Oh, he's big. He looked good, too.
He's huge.
Yeah, he looked good.
I like Doug DeCinces.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to do, if I ever had any money, I've always wanted to do sort of a, do they still have any money now kind of series for guys that like played in the 1980s, like stars. The other day I was on Baseball Reference and getting back to like a guy that played as long as Downing but had an even better career. If anyone's seen like what Carl Yastrzemski did, and now I know I hate the Red Sox, right? I'm an Angel guy, not a big Red Sox guy, but that guy played like, again, another guy, 22, 23 years. I think he made less than $9 million in total earnings, which was unbelievable for the career. Just go on Baseball Reference one time.
Yeah.
Look at how good he was. And you'll appreciate this, Danny, too, is he had his full 4 years at Notre Dame. And then he played at Long Beach State, so you probably had to stay 3 years, right? Yeah. Imagine having to stay a full 4 years and then starting your career and making it as long as you did. And I still remember a game at Anaheim Stadium when I was young. It was Flag Day. It was probably like 1980, 1981, where he was just had a hat on. He was one of the last guys, like those NHL guys that, you know, for the Edmonton Oilers that didn't have to wear helmets. You know,
they've earned that.
Get out there in his cloth bat or his wool batting helmet. And I remember him hitting a home run in the bullpen in right field when he was probably like 44, 45 years old.
Yeah, it's crazy to see those guys have careers like that, because that, I mean, the way you speak of it, it's unheard of. You don't have guys that play 15 years anymore. 12. A lot of guys don't get 10 years anymore. It's really hard now with the way the game has evolved. Most guys don't get 10 years anymore, but it's so cool to look back. I got to play with a couple guys that had 20 years. I got to play with Pudge, and then I think Matt Stairs was right there, like 19.
Yep.
And so it's cool to see those guys. I mean, they're 40 years old playing, hitting pinch hit home runs. You're talking. It's pretty special to see guys that are in the game for that long.
Yeah, and I worked, alongside my broadcasting days with Tony Gwynn. It was always like, hey, 20 years on a bubblegum card with the same team. I mean, that's amazing.
That's special.
Yep. And even Tony, boy, he would be worth, 3 times as much as he wound up getting paid over the life of his career. But when you look at like Yaz's career earnings, and you're like, I don't even know if it was $9 million, to be honest with you. I have to look at it, but it was something astonishing. And he's retired, like, guy's been retired 40 years now or something like that.
Yeah.
That was in 83. So,
Wow. Well, I got 5 on it. If you ever do want to make that a series, we'll see what we can do there. That would be fun.
I don't know if I'd get enough guys to, the Carney Lansfors and the Rick Burlesons of the day.
Yeah.
Or Bobby Gritch, for that matter, right? I mean,
yeah.
Well, you go from East Coast to West Coast. You kind of bounced around throughout your career. We'll kind of touch on that. But now residing in San Diego, you have, your wife, your kids. Have they followed your footsteps to U of A or broadcasting field at all or anything like that?
No broadcasters, but my son's actually entering his final year at the University of Arizona.
Sweet.
So
Wildcats.
Wildcats. But he's had
that's right, Danny. I forgot about that. Yeah.
He's had a sort of different experience. I mean, he's into law and all that kind of stuff, and he never plays video games, and he never leaves a couple of kids from his Little League team are actually on the U of A team, and they were All-Americans, and they're probably going to be, they'll make it, probably high in the minor leagues. They'll be first or second rounders. And he never, I'm like, hey, you ever talk to, Dayton Dooney and those guys? Nah, man, I don't know. I got to build Minecraft and all that kind of stuff. So, and my daughter's about ready to go to San Diego State. So, but they have no interest in broadcasting.
Call me crazy. Maybe it's not you, but didn't she call a game with you, or didn't have to fill in, or am I way off?
No. So we actually fooled her about a year ago. So I was doing a game with Ryan Hollins, UCLA, an NBA guy, and he had gotten stuck in at NBA All-Star Weekend. And so it was a big game too. It was BYU at LMU, which is always a big game, and it was a 1:00 start on this regional network. And so he couldn't get there. And Jeff Turiel, who you know Jeff, is now
Yep.
SID at UCSD, so he's sort of our bosses, right?
Yep.
And at the time, he was the coordinating producer for the WCC network, and his job was to hire all of us. So we were just driving. He lives in La Costa area, so we were driving up to LMU, just calling everyone in the Rolodex. It's funny, everyone wants to be on TV, right, until you actually need them the day of.
Yeah.
All right, well, Ryan's not going to be there, so we had a female that was a sideline reporter, and we're like, oh, she played basketball, we'll just slide her in, everything's okay, cool. So we call her, and we hear this like, what the hell? It's like, yeah, I'm at this disco in Vietnam. Okay.
So you're going to be late.
So she didn't realize she was on the schedule. So long story short, I have to do the game by myself, but we're going to run through the Open. And so my daughter was on a tour at LMU, and then we were practicing the Open, 15 minutes before, like 12:45. And I'm like, honey, you got to get on here. You got to help me out. You got to be my color commentator. And the guys in the truck, we just rolled the Open and everything. And I came out, and I asked her a question, and she just went, like it was an SNL skit. She was like, that was about it. So
broadcasting career was over.
I still have it. And she, I thought I could fool her, but she knows I'm full of crap. So
that's okay. Well, that makes me feel better because I made a note here, but I was like, I'm just going to ask it. I don't want to be way off, but I feel like I remember you telling me that. That's hilarious.
Yeah. So it was kind of cool. I got it on tape somewhere. It's pretty funny to show her.
Yeah. Well, we brought up the Wildcats. Why Arizona? Did you have any particular draw to attending University of Arizona, or just kind of it worked out?
Not really. Not really, to be honest with you. But so like all broadcasters, everybody wants to go to Syracuse, right? So I woke up just one day in like third grade, and I'm like, I'm going to Syracuse. But unfortunately, Syracuse has this rule about having to have good grades and SATs to get in. And so, it's a silly little rule, right?
Yeah.
So I fought everything to get in, tooth and nail, and I finally got in. They let me in through some back door. I wasn't, my SATs were terrible, although my grades were okay. So they let me in, and then my dad's like, I'm not paying for that crap. So sorry, man. You got to figure something else out. So if you're going to go to Syracuse, right, you're going to go there because it's a great student radio station and the pipeline and everything. So I'm like, well, man, now I need another plan. Every other big broadcasting school is private, like Boston University or Northwestern. So I'm like, well, where can I go where they don't do broadcasting at all? And maybe while I'm a student, I'll have a chance to get an actual job in the market. And then I'll skip sort of that step, right? Because in the late 80s, early 90s, almost everybody had to go to this, like a tiny market in Montana, right? Or, somewhere in the Midwest, or even Yuma, Arizona. Then you go to a Tucson, and then you move on to your Phoenix and LA and everything. And that's kind of the step ladder. And so I just go, let me just go to Tucson, right? And before you know it, it was the best decision I ever made, because when I got there, the guy who was working baseball games, and every game had to be part of the package for the radio station in a small market like that, was they had to do football, basketball, and baseball. And Daniel know in those days, like baseball started, like if you were in the Sun Belt, man, you could start January 3rd and have a 3-game series against like St. Francis College from New York. And they had to have all those on the radio in Tucson. And so they hired me because the play-by-play guy, the number one guy, was off doing football, and basketball was a marquee sport, right? They were winning national championships and going to the Final Four. I was like, I don't want to go do 6-pack baseball. So, and in those days they paid, it was like 1990, 91, they were paying like $300 a game. So I can work Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, make $900. And back then you could, if you gave me $900, I could live the whole semester on it. I mean, I remember my dad dropped me off as a freshman at U of A, like with $1,000, and I think I gave him back like $200 when I got back at Christmas time, right? So it actually became a good decision, because before you knew it, I was on this station. I was, not only did I skip the student station, but I went right to the number one station in town. And then by the time I was a senior, I was also the weekend sports anchor at the CBS affiliate. And then there was a AAA team there for the Houston Astros. And the guy who was the play-by-play guy there was Mario Impemba, former Angel guy, Detroit Tigers. Right? So he calls me up one day, and he's like, love listening to you do Wildcat baseball. My wife's due in July, and we have a long trip to Canada, Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver, and then Portland or something. So it's like a 16-game trip, and she's due, and I need a backup. So they hired me for the season, and before you knew it, I had a AAA job. So it was just sort of like, whoa, this was
like
couldn't have
that.
worked out any better, right?
Yeah.
Now I probably don't have the same kind of connections I might have had at Syracuse, but it's certainly started me on the right path.
And sounds like you took advantage too, which is the biggest part.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to skip some tough parts too, not having to go through like the low levels or not having to go through the college student, radio part of it. Like you got to skip some steps and move up, which seems pretty quick.
But I really didn't want to, and you, Danny, you'd appreciate this too. All of you guys, right? The thing I wanted to do was ride the buses in A-ball more than anything else. And the guy who owned the guy who owned the AAA team also owned the Quad City Angels, the A-ball Midwest League team. And so the natural progression was the number 2 guy in Tucson when the number 1 guy moved out in Quad Cities. He would get that job. So I was like in line to get that job. And I recall I got 2 A-ball jobs. One was in Beloit in the Midwest League. And we had the earthquake in '94 in Northridge, right? Parents in Fullerton and everything's shaking. I'm like, I'm going to go to Beloit early. And I pulled into Tucson, Arizona, and I saw one ad for a weekend sports anchor. And I'm like, I'll take, let me see. And they said, yeah, we'll hire you. And it was paying like $24,000 as opposed to, I was going to make $800 a month in Beloit. So I'm like, all right, I'll take that. Then I went back to Tucson. And then after that, I got a job with the Palm Springs Angels a couple of years after doing Tucson. And then that fell through and I got a better TV job. So wanted to be in the California League, the Midwest League. I didn't want to skip that step. But
what organization was Beloit at the time? Was it the Twins still?
No, it was the Brewers, Beloit Brewers.
Okay.
So you just packed up and we're going
packed
one
up
place?
Everything in an '86 Toyota in Fullerton, California, and I drove right
on your way to Wisconsin, and you stopped
on my way to Wisconsin. The guy had originally offered me $600, but I talked him up to $800, and then I was going to get a shift across the way at the ice rink, just helping people get in or something like that. And so. And I went there and I got the job in Tucson. So it was like, all right, I'm gonna take a sports anchor job. So
that's awesome, pretty awesome.
Was it always baseball for you? Was that the always kind of the end goal?
Yeah, baseball and basketball. Yeah, I always sort of wanted to be an NBA guy, still do, and just love baseball.
Yeah,
it's so hard, and
so hard.
And it's, there's some times where minor league guys are getting jobs and there's other times when they're not, sort of goes in these streaks. And
I have a question for you.
Yes.
With the way that, with you calling games, like with the way that you see the game has developed now and it's so pitcher dominant, is it as fun to call a game now? I mean, compared to like a steroid era, type of league where it was just tons of power, tons of offense. Now you have this tons of action. Now it's just dominant pitching. In the 4th inning, the starter comes out and it's 95 to 100 the rest of the game out of the bullpen. So can you talk about that a little bit? Is it as fun for you as, to watch that stuff?
Well, it's always been fun. I mean, it's probably harder for you guys, right? That we're trying to, when you probably started your career, guys in the middle innings didn't pitch like that. Have that kind of velocity and all the MLB. It's funny. I was watching like that Ryan Sandberg game the other day, from 1984 when I think I was 13. It was the Cards and the Cubs, and he went like 5 for 6.
He tied it and then won it, right?
Tied it and won it off of Suter, right? So he hit him
off Suter, yeah.
Yeah, and Suter had a great forkball, right? And so he was just like, okay, I'm going to swing at the bottom of the ball as opposed to across the top, right? So he hit him out to left in like the bottom of the 9th and then took him out on the 10th. But you would never you'd never see a guy like Suter out there for 2 innings or anything like that. So it's certainly changed, but you adapt to it. And I've done more college baseball than anything nowadays. It's like, that Friday is really fun. Half the Saturday's okay. When you get to Sunday. Oh my God, some of these games that we had in the 6-pack on Sundays back in the early 90s were just, dreadful. You'd be there all day. And it was like 21-17, Arizona State over Arizona. And by the way, there was only 6 teams at that time in the Pac-12 that participated in baseball in the South, right? And the North sort of had their own thing going. And there was a lot of pros and everything. But back to your question, it's you just got to adjust, right? And I always, as long as you know what guys are throwing and can get a feel for the game. I think it's okay. The hardest thing, for me when you're broadcasting is like not to talk too much. That's the toughest thing when you get into the technical part of it. I mean, the game sort of you let it come to you, but you got to pick and choose your spots to talk and have lively discussion. So it's quite an art, to be quite honest with you. That it takes a long time to learn. Just reps, it's just like any other guy, right? You had to have your 500 at bats before you got to the big leagues.
Right. Well, it's crazy because you say it's an art, because I've heard of guys, when I'm listening to games I played in the big leagues, and it'd be like, oh, Garrett Smith's up to bat, and they'd start talking and talking and talking. They're like, and the count's 2-2, and you're like, where the hell did the at bat go?
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing.
Right,
Steve can say it too, is TV and radio are so different, especially for baseball. I mean, I have a face for radio, so I prefer radio. I like chatting, not chatting too much, but I like kind of drawing that picture.
I mean, if I had my druthers, I would do it. And even when I work with Mario, he wound up doing 4 or 5 years with the Angels and then like 18 with the Tigers on TV. And all his Angels stuff was on the radio. And he's always like, I want to go back. And he got to go back and do the Red Sox last year on radio, and he loved it. That's an art form too, right? And then to try and dial it back on TV is so much different. And a lot of times, as you know, Danny, you have the wives are always listening, right? So you always have to figure out what not to say. I mean, the amount of times that I got screamed at for saying something. I'll never forget Jared Goff's dad. So Jared, right? Obviously.
Heard of him.
And Jerry was a catcher for the Astros, and he was, at the time, we were the Astros AAA affiliate. And so he had just come off that game where he had allowed 7 pass balls in a game. Do you remember this game? It's the record, 6 or 7. And so, I remember being on the air, and I was sort of the color analyst, and Mario said something to me, and he was like, what sort of advice do you have? And I was like, for him. And I'm like, well, if I was him, I'd pick up an apartment guide to Tucson, because that's where he's going to wind up going, They have one down at the Circle K. And I'm thinking, actually, Danny, if your family had heard that, right? Oh, the amount of crap that to this day, even because I did a bunch of Jared's games when he was in high school football, and I see the dad and the family, and I'm like, I don't even want to remind him. I was the baseball guy, and I've had managers. One manager wanted to throw me out of a window. So it's quite interesting.
It's tough. It's a tough job you guys do, because it's so easy to get caught up, I feel like, as a fan, but to remember the professional side of it, that we have kids, we have wives, we have parents, and we're everything to that small group.
Right.
And when the family feels like, oh, they're being attacked, it's like, oh man, go after them. I mean, I've gotten it in with people, our radio and TV guys before. I mean, not all of them, but I've said a couple words. So I'm just like, dude, just be careful, be respectful of the families. Like, like,
they're people too,
Yeah. No parents want to hear their kids getting bashed on TV or on the radio. It's like, and it's a tough job, because as a fan, because even though I played for a long time, I'm still a fan.
Right.
I'm still
your emotions can get in the way, for sure.
The emotions, and that's part of the reason I kind of stopped watching mainstream sports, is because I started catching myself watching the NFL, be like, how did he not catch that? And I'm like, because it's not that easy.
Yeah.
Right.
And I started forgetting that, and I was like, I'm done watching sports, because I can't watch it without judging it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the hardest thing to learn. I've heard, I've had a couple of discussions with Vin Scully. One of them was like, don't ever make the players your friends. I don't want to know their names outside of, I don't want to talk to them on the plane, none of that stuff. I had the unique, interesting thing that happened to me, and you can appreciate this, Danny, is when I would fill in for Matt Vasgersian in 2006. Now, the Padres had never had a no-hitter, and I don't think they've ever had a no-hitter. But 6 Fridays in a row, they took a no-hitter into the 8th inning, and I was the guy on the air, right? Like, oh, great, you can't say it, right? You can't
talk about it.
And so we didn't for like the first 3 Fridays in a row, right? And Mud Grant, Mark, and I took a lot of crap for that from some fans who were like, I didn't say anything. The players were like, thank you, didn't say anything. They never got the no-hitter or anything. So we got to this game, Chris Young, and they just replayed it on Fox Sports the other day, where he took a no-hitter to, I think there was one out in the ninth inning, and Joe Randa hit a pinch hit home run to end the no-hitter. And the whole game, I was like, 7th, 8th, 9th inning, I'm like, it's a no-hitter, And so, like, jinx, jinx, jinx. But what I had forgotten about this, and people were still killing it. By the way, that game was in 2016. They replayed it a month ago. People were still killing me on Twitter. You jinxed it, you asshole.
My gosh.
14 years later.
Hey, people don't forget.
Yeah.
What I failed to tell them back, which I just remembered, was Mud Grant and I, earlier that week, so after we had three near no-hitters going into the ninth inning, and that great pitching staff with Maddox, Wells, right?
Yeah.
Young, so there was always going to be a chance, on those days. We were at the can, and walking in between the two of us was Vin Scully, and Mud just said, hey Vin, like, what do you do if you got a no-hitter going into the ninth inning? Do you say it? Do you jinx? And he's like, hey, it is up to you to tell that audience out there that it's a no-hitter. And he said, you know what I tell him? I say, everybody, call your friends.
Yeah.
There's history going. So after that, I decided I am never again not saying it. Fast forward a couple of years later, and Chris Young has a perfect game going into the ninth inning in Milwaukee. And I haven't said anything. And I'm working in a 3-man booth, me, Mud, and Tony Gwynn. So the three of us are doing the game, and we start out. I'm like, here we go to the ninth inning, 7-0, Padres. And it was a terrible, like a September roster, all the call-ups, right? He had no business getting it. And Tony goes, you're not going to say it, are you? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, Mud, you're not going to say it. None of you guys have the guts. Well, I'm going to say it. Got a perfect game going. I'm like, thank you. Hall of Famer says it. Everybody loves him. They're not going to
burn him at the stake. No way.
So he gets an out, and then Gabe Kapler comes up, right? He's pinch hitting, and he's hurt, and he just tattoos a pitch.
Gabe Kapler.
And so the no-hitter is gone. The perfect game's over, everything. And so it's a travel day on Sunday. We're leaving Milwaukee, coming back to San Diego. And I got on the bus, man, and the cold stares of you could tell I was up a creek without a paddle, man. The guys were ready to kill me. And you have to ride in the front of the bus, right? There's usually like
yeah.
Right? And there's a player bus. But for some reason, I think this day there was only one bus, right? My luck.
Of course there was. Yeah.
And so the guys are just like, they're all, and I can hear them talking to their wives. Yeah, he would have got it if that son of a bitch didn't say anything. And they were just like killing me. So finally we get on the plane, and we're sitting in the front of the plane, and Tony gets up, and this is why I love Tony. He goes, timeout. He just goes, stop ragging this guy's ass. He's like, I said it, not him. He didn't say anything. I said it. So if you got any problem with me, that's on me, man. And sat down, and I was like, holy crap. And we just had a nice flight back home, and nobody bothered me ever again over that. And Tony didn't even like flying, so it must have been really hard for him to get up in the front of, a 25-man roster and say something like that.
Yeah.
So it's, learning what not to say too
It's crazy. It's crazy. It's about CY. You're talking about a big CY, right? 6'10" CY.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that.
If there was one guy that probably was like the nicest about it, I would probably venture to say it was him. He's like the nicest, one of the nicest people I've ever played with. The gentle giant.
Who did he?
For some reason, he did not like me. He did.
Really?
He did not like me.
Maybe you didn't give him enough credit on his right jab. Who was he fighting that one day?
Oh, I did that game.
Someone charged him down, right?
Yeah, he fought Derek Lee at Wrigley Field. I was doing that game too.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Why would you take a guy on that has a 15-foot wingspan?
Derek Lee's also pretty big.
It was nuts. And CY, that guy he was probably the least likely guy ever to get a no-hitter, even though he had a good fastball and a really good curveball. But people would foul stuff off, so he'd be at like 100 pitches by the 6th inning, right? So it was really hard to get him and he never ever got one in his career. But I'll never forget one time. This is how much he did not like me. I went in the clubhouse and I was the sideline reporter and the pregame show guy for the Padres. I'm like, can I have 2 minutes with you? And he's like, all right. And so he sits down in the dugout next to you. Danny knows where this is going, right? He sits down in the dugout next to me, and there's that big Timex clock down the left field line, right? I see him look at it, and now I know. I start talking right when it hits. I think we started at like 5:18. Right when it hit 5:20, he just got up and walked out. And he was like, "There's your 2 minutes."
Oh my gosh!
And I didn't, I'm like, whatever. That's me, Seth. Nothing really bothers me.
Yeah, I'm sure you had a good chuckle.
It bothered the producer because we had to kill like 5 minutes. And the only thing I can think of is like, remember the game where Pujols hit him square on, right? You remember the line drive that he took right and broke his?
Yeah.
And so I was the reporter for that. And, I went down and found out some information underneath and reported it. It probably was something that maybe his family didn't like or something. So it's,
He probably asked him, how do you feel? And he's like, how the fuck you think I feel?
Yeah. Exactly. Well, I got to speak to him about that, but it was, he just like, I could tell he just didn't. There's some guys that are just not going to like it, right?
It's just that, dude, there's plenty of guys I played with that we didn't get along. It's just when you work in that close vicinity for 162 games, you ain't gonna get along with everybody. That's just how it's gonna be.
Right. So it was,
Yeah,
it is what it is.
Yep.
So we paused the first half of the interview there with ESPN broadcaster and two-time Emmy Award winner Steve Quis. From personal experience, I'll go first right off the bat, guys. In this field, it's so awesome to see someone have the confidence, have the natural ability to not shy away from an opportunity, know what he wants, and kind of go after it, because there's no time to sit around in this field. Guys do it forever, and how they got there was networking, taking advantage of an opportunity. And like he says, not only, saying yes to it, but you got to be good at it when you go fill in for someone. You have to, you know what I mean? You have to be able to stick out and be recognizable and have someone be like, oh, shoot, we're in a pinch. Let's reach out to Steve. He did such a great job. You know what I mean? So it was so cool to kind of hear that. I mean, obviously it has taken him so many different directions and things like that, but to kind of hear how it started, and I know you guys want to dive into that too, but just knowing right away what he wanted to do and finding that journey along the way.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that point, what you're making there is, a lot of kids growing up want to be the professional athlete. They want to be that fireman. They want to be the astronaut, And it's just funny the route that he was like, no, I want to be a broadcaster. And he started working on his craft, if you think about it, at that young age. And so it allowed him to, once he was in that position, and as he mentioned, he didn't have to go through the minor league steps of broadcasting and, sharpen the tools, polish his craft. He was ready. He was ready to jump right in the fire. And it's clear in his work and, that energetic, passionate, confidence, like you're saying, in his storytelling and his broadcasting. I mean, that conversation could have gone forever. We could have talked about just about anything, and I think he was gonna jump right through the screen at us. Like, it was great.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the point that I really liked was that you talk about him taking advantage of what was given to him, was that he talked about wanting to go to Syracuse. That was his dream, to go to Syracuse as broadcasting. I guess that's the mecca of broadcasting, is to go to Syracuse University. And he finally gets in, and when he gets in, his dad says, by the way, we're not paying for that. You're going to have to figure something else out. So the fact that he then chose the University of Arizona, which ended up leading him probably down, possibly more success than he maybe could have ever had at Syracuse, just because the path that he chose and where it led him. He went to U of A because of the fact that he knew that there was not a broadcasting position there really, and he wanted to go in and see if they had someone. And he went in there, and they basically kind of opened it up for him to take it, and he ran with it and kind of created his own career.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's awesome. Just to, like you said, G, to have that at a young age, where that's not you might listen to stuff, know your person who calls the games for your favorite team, but rarely are those the select few that are trying to take up the broadcasting field. I know I did. I love to play imaginary baseball. I love to announce lineups, all that stuff, but I still had the dream of, I'm going to play it. I'm not going to talk about it.
You were visualizing the actual game playing in the game, not necessarily the announcing, although you did that on the side. You provided some great commentary to your games when you're little, for sure.
At this time, we'll just send it to the back half of the interview with Steve. You mentioned Matt Vasgersian and Matty V. You guys, it's actually a pretty funny story of how you kind of got started and filling in for him, if I remember correctly. If you want to maybe dive into that and how you kind of got your into the booth.
Yeah, so actually Matty and I go way, way back to we were both together in Tucson for a long, long time, because he was with the Tucson Toros. But I met him when he was the voice of the High Desert Mavericks in like 1990. That was a team out in Adelanto, just north of like San Bernardino. You go up the 15. Mm-hmm. You're on your way to Vegas, right? You go up the 395.
I've been to that field, actually.
Yeah, and they had the little there was a big bar called the Cocky Bull next door. They had like you could ride the mechanical bull. And so I remember going out there one day, and Vasgersian had like a fishing pole, and he would put like tickets on the end of the fishing pole, and he'd put it into the stands, and he'd reel it in, and people would try and grab the tickets and everything. And, that's something goofy that I would do. So the two of us stayed in contact, and I went to Tucson, he went to El Paso, and he became the number one guy. And then, then we sort of, I did my thing and went to San Diego. He went to Milwaukee. And then when we came back, he needed a backup guy, and I had started working for Channel 4, and they decided to make me the backup guy. And again, you guys, baseball guys, will appreciate this. I made my major league debut in relief because I sounded a lot like Matt. And one day they were playing the Rockies, and it was a boring-ass game. And Rockies games at Coors Field, they're all 18-17. But even in Petco Park, they were like 11-9. And he's like, I got a flight to catch. He's like, no one will know the difference. I'm out. Take over in the seventh. I just came in relief in the seventh and made my play-by-play debut, and nobody knew the difference from the seventh, eighth, and ninth innings on. And he went on to go do his poker or whatever he was doing back then. And
that's hilarious.
But the problem was that I sounded so much like him. People just didn't like me, and they liked him. But there were some days where he would be like, hey, look. It was almost like working at Shakey's Pizza when I was a kid, right? So I'd call up and be like, hey, man, I'll take your 10-2 on Saturday if you take my 3-5 on Sunday. And so sometimes we would shift like that, and he'd just be like – so there were times where I would do the game, and people would not – my boss wouldn't even know it was me. And I'd go into his office and be like, okay, how was it this weekend, And he'd be like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I was the guy doing the game. He's like, really? Oh, I thought you guys were pretty good. And as a matter of fact, I saw a tweet the other day. It's probably like right at the start of this lockdown, where somebody's like, nobody can argue with me that Matt Vasgersian is not the greatest broadcaster in the world. Listen to this call. And it was actually
no way.
People were like, yeah, that was Steve. I hate that guy, man. No. I'm like, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Well, you got more than just a cup of Joe. You were the Padre, 6 years, 4 years?
I got 4 years in San Diego and then 2 with the Angels.
Yeah.
It was good. I wish I could have been. Would love that. But, sometimes you get in bad circumstances, right? Sometimes you're in an organization where you're just blocked, right?
Yep.
How did that guy at the Cubs second base prospects do for 20 years, right? They had to go someplace else. And so what happened was Vasgersian left. They brought in another guy, and then the new, the Padres sold, right? And then the new owner's like, we want to bring in Dick Enberg, and then that was it. We were all out on the streets. So that happens in this game. It's just how do you rebound, which is the key.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to bring up. You had mentioned that you did the golf combo of the dad and then Jared in different sports, obviously, but. Do you have any other memorable combinations like that you can recall? Your career's pretty vast, and you got a lot of years.
Started in '89. There's got to be one. Yeah, I mean, I remember. Yeah, Reggie. I mean, that's the key thing. I mean, when I started in San Diego, he was just a freshman at Helix High School. And, you know, now he's like one of the top guys at Fox, for goodness sakes. Alex Smith. Trying to think of father-son combos or anything like that. But I've covered. So actually, it's a good question. I was doing my football reel the other day, and I'm like, all right, Josh Rosen's on there throwing touchdowns for St. John Bosco. Jared Goff's on there. Reggie Bush is on there. Kenny Stills is on there.
Build a roster off of that.
There's like 5 or 6 other guys that I, had the pleasure of calling. And I'm like, wow, this is, amazing. Now, on the flip side of that, it sort of dates your resume tape, right? If you're trying to get away with something that's 5 years old, they're probably like, well, wait a minute, Jared Goff's been in the NFL now for 4 years.
It means you've only gotten better, that's all.
Yeah,
experience.
So, but they might not look at that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I usually, and the other thing too is I work with a lot of, seems like anyone who does color for me, their career goes up here while mine go back down a little bit. I mean, like I work with Dave Roberts, he's Dodger manager. Work with Craig Robinson, Obama's brother-in-law, who just took over, I think, the NCAA head basketball committee here. Work with a lot of people. Roman Oben that, has gone on to NFL stuff. So, work with a lot of people. Some people I can't, some people I'm like, oh my God, I don't even remember working with that guy. But the one guy I totally forgot that was my partner for a year was Akbar Gabajabiamila, who's hosting the NBC show, the Gladiators or whatever.
The new one.
He makes $5 million a year doing the Gladiator show.
Wow.
And I totally forgot. I forgot I'd worked with him for like a full year on high school. I was watching a Padre game back off the DVR from like 14 years ago and had saw me and him working together on something. I was like, holy crap.
Yeah. So, that's awesome. I've always appreciated your versatility and people that do that. I always gravitated towards Mike Tirico when I was growing up. Just he explained his 2 weeks one time on SportsCenter, and I was like, holy cow. It was so awesome. But you worked alongside Tony Gwynn when you filled in for Ted Leitner for SDSU basketball as well, right?
Yep. Yeah, that was one of my first ever games.
Was he I should probably know this, but did he always do color for San Diego State basketball? Or
in the early days, yeah, he was real versatile because he wasn't in the booth much for baseball.
Okay.
If I remember correctly. For some reason he didn't this was early 2000, like 2004.
Okay.
So I don't think he had a full Padre schedule. He might not have wanted to work that much. And I don't think maybe he had just taken over as the Aztec head baseball coach.
Yeah.
About the time, right? So it was easier to do that. But we just did a handful of games together. But he was very complimentary because it was my third ever game, and I really didn't have a reason to be doing that game. It was just like Ted Leitner for some reason. And I don't know, Teddy was working at 1090 and doing the morning show or the afternoon show or something. And for some reason, they thought it would be really cool to send him to Baghdad to talk to the troops. Like the troops had any idea who Ted Leitner is, right? I mean, like it's not Bob Hope, for goodness sakes. Like he's a big deal in San Diego, but to send him to Baghdad where your troops are not all from, Camp Pendleton or even. So for some reason they sent him over there, and they needed 3 games covered. And I'll never forget their producer Nick Davis was like in a room. He's like, I don't have a play-by-play guy. Has anyone done basketball play-by-play? And I've done a bunch. I've done a few games.
Hey, you got to do it.
Fake until you make it.
So I did it, and boom, they were like, oh, that's great, man. Can you do more? And then before you know it, I was doing Padres stuff.
You're like, well, I'm really busy with the rest of my games, but I'll see.
I'll fit you in.
Hey, but that's what you got to do. I didn't know shit about water polo, and they asked, yeah, for sure. YouTube, water polo for dummy, you know what I mean? Like, you just have to figure it out. And like you said, they maybe didn't have to send Ted, but you got to take advantage and you get in, and now we transition into your Emmys. Emmy winner, first one on the show here. So That's exciting
nice.
stuff. But let's talk about that. That Trevor Hoffman 479 record-setting save. Not just the call, but the moment. When I look back and watched it, Petco was packed. It's been years since then. Petco was electric. Just an awesome scene and environment. If you want to kind of just dive into your feeling, were you a little nervous going into that ninth inning? Did you plan out what you were going to say? Kind of how did that go?
Well, not nervous, because when I told you the CY story, right, about the potential no-hitter, that was Friday. And I will never forget, in the truck, they were like, hey, you're live on ESPN now across the nation. They picked this up because they would do that, and they still do that if it's a big historic moment, right? You're live. So, and then we had all those sort of near no-hitters in it. And that was a big season because the Padres made the playoffs. There was a lot of milestones in that year. And it seemed like every single big moment, like I was the guy that happened to be filling in for Matt. So every time Matt left, I just had this lucky moment. And so Friday was CY, and then Saturday night, Hoffman tied Lee Smith, right? So I had that, and then the third game was the record-breaking game. So it wasn't – I was really I was hoping that would happen. The only thing that I sort of wanted to showcase was the fact that he's an Arizona alum, okay? So and I've known him for a long time, right?
Yeah.
Because he was a shortstop, and he was drafted for the Reds and went on to Billings, where he started his career as the Billings Mustangs shortstop, right? So who in their right mind would have ever thought that the Billings Mustangs closer would one day become Major League Baseball's all-time saves leader? So I wanted to work that in, and I did. But as the game progressed and he had a chance to get it, I remember starting to get a little antsy and nervous toward the ninth inning, because you don't want to blow that moment, right? And we decided to dump out of the commercial break, because the coolest thing about Hoffy coming on is Hell's Bells, right? And the bullpen gate swinging open. But that's something that normally people don't see live because you're at the break, right? So I remember, like, everybody was in the truck. The producers were in the truck, the owner of the station manager, everybody was like, hey, man, we're going to help you through this. So I remember not to say anything. And, hey, after 8 innings of play, it's 4-1 Padres. And guess what's about to happen? And then you just shut up, right? And it was like Hell's Bells of dang, and then him running out and all the great shots, right?
Yeah, phenomenal.
Until the end. And then it had the weirdest sort of finish, where it was just sort of this like check swing. Freddie Garcia was the batter, right? And that year he hit like 379. I think he won the National League batting title, or maybe he did the year after. He had this sort of weird swing, right? And I looked down toward third, and I didn't see that he fell. He actually fell in the box, so it wasn't going to be as close a play. But it got by the third base. So it was I remember saying toward third, which is now kind of in the 5.5 hole. Backhanded by Blum was the shortstop, and he's got to hurry. And he just fired it to first, and then it was over. And it was just sort of like, say 479, this is great, and then shut up until
taking a moment.
Oh, it was perfect.
30 seconds or something, and then talk about, hey, do you ever think the Billings Mustangs closer would be, the all-time saves leader? So, it was something I sort of had prepared, and kind of a rough outline of what I was going to say.
Yeah.
You hear so many times, though, of like, I don't know, I've heard in interviews and whatnot where it's like, don't go in with a premeditated, like, saying or catchphrase or anything like that and let the moment take you. But you kind of had that connection. So I guess that makes sense for you to have, pull that together. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's that is a good point to not and I try not to do that ever again. But it was just something where, like, hey, we're both Arizona guys. And when I first set foot on campus, he was like the shortstop in his junior year, and people knew. I mean, they all knew the story too. But I think it was a good reminder to know, because he passed Lee Smith, who didn't have that kind of story, and I don't know. There's guys that have that story, but probably aren't as successful. So
it was pretty cool.
I would say the only current one right now is probably Kenley Jansen.
Yeah, former catcher, right? And
former catcher. Everybody else, for what I know of, maybe Mike Lorenzen.
Yeah, Fullerton.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Right. But outside of that, most of the guys are all, they're pitchers. I mean, because now the way that the draft has even come is that they're drafting tail end guy closers out of college in the first round now.
Yeah.
Rather than drafting some big starter, he can't become a starter, throw him in the bullpen, he'll bump up 3 or 4 miles an hour. No, they're drafting just tail end guys. So to have the story of, Trevor Hoffman being this great shortstop at U of A, didn't work, kept a big arm, gets on the mound. I mean, you have one closer as Mariano dominate the whole league with 1 pitch, and you have the other closer dominate the whole league with 2 pitches.
Right.
Like fastball, changeup. I mean, just I remember guys talking about his changeup and being like, you could sit on his changeup and you couldn't hit it.
Right.
You missed
it was just Bugs Bunny, man. It was just boom.
Yeah, they're like, you knew it was coming. You'd look for it for the whole at bat, and you'd swing and miss.
Yep. And going back to something we had talked about earlier is like what not to say. Sometimes you're put in these positions. What I remember mostly about Trevor was the year prior, maybe whatever the year was, where he had that bad September and Tony Gwynn Jr. in Milwaukee hit that ball into right field to end the Padres' chances of making the playoffs. I think it might have been 2009 or 2010. Might have been 2009 they were in the race. They had like Wells and Maddox. And one day I go into Bud Black's office. He'd always let us kind of come into the office. And the on my seat and on his seat was a report, the injury report, right? And so it was early September. We were at Dodger Stadium. And I just happened to see bone spurs in Hoffy's elbow. And it was like, sure. And he was blowing a lot of saves in September. And it was just something you knew, can't say, man, right? Team has it. And poor guy had to take so much crap on the radio and everything and then he had surgery, right? He had to have those things. So it was revealed. It was later revealed. But that's another thing where then you got to try to spin it, right? When you're out there, full well what's going on.
Yeah.
But if you say it, that's basically the end of it.
Well, I feel like nowadays you wouldn't have to do that because you don't have as many guys that go out and play through an injury. Back in the day, guys would, they would tape their arms together, tape their shins, whatever they had to do to get on the field, those guys used to do to get on the field. That ain't the case anymore. So to have Hoffman going out there blowing saves, but still that he's got the balls to be out there and be like, I'm going to get this done. Like, I'm the best guy for this job. I'm going to go out there and get this done, hurt or not. I'm going to try to do this until there was obviously a point where he had to have the spurs removed.
Yep. And by the way, and he was like the nicest guy, and he loved the U of A connection, and he always teased me about sounding like Matt all the time. He'd be like, I can't tell the difference between the two of you guys. And I'm like, well, hopefully that'll get me somewhere. But my baseball career stalled after 2013 season. So.
Well, it's definitely picked up in basketball. You're all over the place. Basketball-wise, you work for a ton of different networks. We mentioned ESPN. But we'll kind of slide into, we see the background there, UC San Diego Athletics. Let's kind of talk about that connection a little bit. As mentioned, I can remember from my PA days, just seeing and looking across, obviously that being what I wanted to do at the time, and just watching you, and you were so like calm and relaxed and laughing and having a good time. You kind of touched on that earlier. Is that just always been your style, or have you kind of had to work into what you're into now?
Yeah, I had an experience where it was 1993, and it was or 94 somewhere. There was a Suns game, and you guys will appreciate this because you're all LA kids, right? And so if I asked you who are the top 3 anchors in Los Angeles, sports anchors, you would tell me who's on Channel 2. Jim Hill.
Yeah.
Right. Fred Rogan on Channel 4.
Fred Rogan.
And whoever was on 7 at the time had been there for a while. I don't know if it was Ted Doss or anything. And so I was doing a live shot down to Tucson in up at a Suns playoff game. It might have even been the NBA. What? No, it would have been the Lakers Suns, right? Because those guys were there. And I had to stand in between. I had to do a live shot between Jim Hill and my boyhood idols and Fred Rogan and everything. And I was so like the most nervous I've ever been. And I did the first one at 5:00. And I just knocked it out of the park. And they were like, hey, man, you're really good. You're really good. Maybe one day you'll be in L.A. The one at 6:00, I shit myself. Would not. I mean, I was like, I mean, it was the worst thing ever.
And boom goes the dynamite.
That's what I was just thinking.
Thank God I swear to you, it was worse than boom goes the dynamite. And thank God there was no Facebook, Twitter, internet, none of that stuff. And what was even worse was I had the IFB like in my pocket, and I'm like digging, and I'm looking like I'm picking my butt, and then I remember, I think it was Fred Rogan, and he just turns to me and goes, "You fucking suck," and then he just now he was joking, right? But so I was like, "Oh my god!"
Oh man.
So one of the guys from the Phoenix market came over and he goes, and this was turned it for me. He goes, "Hey man, relax. We're not landing airplanes." And ever since then, I've been like, you know what? You're right. We're not landing airplanes.
Yeah.
You know, your worst
It's something that you've been working your whole life for, but yeah.
Well, and I haven't had that kind of a turd since then. It was early in my career. Those guys were laughing at me. And they were, I think he just said, "I take back everything I said. You fucking suck." And he was just kidding.
Yeah.
But I was just like, I was like 22 years old, freaking out. So that's why I had that calm demeanor now. And I've done it so much. I've got so many reps.
Yeah.
But what we do at UCSD is, I mean, I'll put that broadcast that we do on E3, at least last year, up with almost anything that I do when I'm on the regular ESPN. Now, sometimes it's not as clean, right? And we don't have the interstitials, the transfers with the music and stuff. But if you're in a bar, right, and the sound's off, and you're looking at it, you're like, hey, this Division II broadcast looks just as good as anything else on ESPN. So
yeah, I agree. Well, talk about that. I mean, you've seen them go from D3 to now one of the top women and men's in the recent year, arguably one of the best programs on both sides in the country for basketball, and now making that transition whenever things get underway. But going to Division I now, competing in the Big West, you've had experience. You think they can just kind of slide in there? I mean, the talent-wise, they've been pretty good in the recent years, but that's a big jump going to Division I like that.
Well, I think, on the men's side with the two guards, I mean, you've seen how fast Tyrell and Mikey Howell are, that if you have two good guards like that, I mean, those guys are like almost like Arizona good. Fast.
And he only got better. I mean, you saw him a lot more than me, but I feel like, I mean, that confidence goes a long way, man. And you could just see it in that tournament. He went off for, 45 or something like that?
Yeah, 45 and had 10 threes and banked the last game winner in. So, and he should be a Division I guard. I mean, he played with really good players up at Woodcrest, so they're going to be pretty good. But they'll struggle, I think, for a few years because they won't be able to land the sort
big
of guy until word gets out, and then and it's real hard to get into that school too. So it's going to be a lot. I mean, they're going to have some issues like USD has and that Stanford and all that of getting in. But maybe they get a couple of grad transfers and turn it up. Most of the other rosters are getting pretty good, though. I mean, like Santa Barbara's getting legit. UCI is always tough.
Yeah.
So 11-team league, it'll take a while, and it'll take a while for the women too. But
I think they'll be able to compete because the Big West is not like
it's gotten better. It's
gotten better, but it's still not like your dominant basketball league. I mean, when I was at Long Beach, they weren't dominant. I think one time we had a chance to go to the playoffs, and it was like, whoa, like hadn't been there. They hadn't been there since Nam, so it was like, everyone was excited. But I mean, I feel like if they have a couple good guards, I feel like you guys will probably be competitive in that league pretty quick.
I mean, they've done a ton to REMAC, that campus, that area. It's such a hotbed. But like you said, the education part, and that was what made them so impressive at the Division II level. I mean, no knock on Cal State's, but to get into a Cal State is a tad different than to get into a UC, and they dominate. And so many in these last in these last couple of years, especially, they've just been it's been impressive to watch. So
I'll be interested to see baseball because they look, they were in the World Series
3 straight years or something like that.
Probably would have been in it again.
Number one in the country for a while. I mean, they have something brewing for sure.
It's hard to I mean, as a college athlete or high school athlete going to college, it's hard to look at San Diego and be like, nah, I don't want to go to school there.
Right.
Like,
especially as a grad transfer, older guy.
Even more so, right? Yeah.
So
I agree.
But what are you up to these days, Steve? You mentioned getting your football reel together. Has that kind of been it? Have you been watching?
I'm trying. Tape? I mean, my goal this year was to get on a football package somewhere, but it's just I mean, right now I don't even think we're going to have a football season, to be quite honest with you. On any
it'll
level.
Be tough.
Yeah, from Pop Warner. As a matter of fact, right before I got on here with you, I was like, has the NFL even said anything? Like, wouldn't training camps be open right about now, right? I mean, the NFL hasn't.
End of the month.
They're like a week and a half away. Yeah.
Yeah, and I haven't heard anything. I haven't even heard the media talking about it. So I'm not real hopeful. I haven't been doing. So I struck out in that department. I usually do the high school championship, like the state high school championship, which, by the way, is the funnest thing. If that's the only thing I do, the 6 games I do, it's a blast. I mean, it's so much fun.
And
so,
you do it with Ricks, right?
With Chris. Yeah, I've done it with Chris Ricks before in the past. He's really fun to work with. Have had a whole bunch of different guys come in. Did it one year with seemed to be getting a lot of UCLA guys. I did it with that former 49ers and UCLA wide receiver for a few years. Oh boy, it was a big deal for the Niners. No, I forget.
Jared Jack? No, that was bad.
He was a wide receiver. You'd know. He was a star. He was a stud at UCLA.
Okay.
But I've had
that's fun.
Partner. Yeah, so I love doing that, but I just told my wife, because now we're going to have 2 college tuitions to pay, and I'm like, by the way, Daddy's only got 1 job now. I didn't have 9, like on a good year. So
yeah.
I'll anchor tomorrow on Channel 8, which is really unique in this COVID era, because sports is the only people that are left at home. Yeah. So we have to do it from home and send it in. And so I do that, but everything else is sort of like just waiting around to see if we even, if that November 10th UC San Diego Cal game's even gonna.
Oh, I sure hope so. Yeah, that would be so cool.
I've heard that college football is possibly going to be like in the spring.
That would be tough to do on the athletes. It will be in the Ivy League.
I was just going to say the lower divisions are going to go spring from what I heard, but the D1 top players are probably not going to know they're not going to know yet. And then the actual top players I heard, like, the Trevor Lawrences, they're not even going to play. So it's kind of like, why play the season? So
why play it that late when the draft's around the corner? It's at that point, you're going to get drafted where you're going to get drafted.
Yeah, they're not even playing in bowl games, let alone a season.
Yeah, and it's easy for like the Ivy League because they don't participate in the playoffs on any level, right? And well, in basketball, yes, but for football, right? They're just done. I mean, even if you go 10-0, that's it, right? I mean, if you don't play your 2 or 3 non-conference games, so they could probably fit in 6 Ivy League games in January if they had to. But I don't know. I mean, will people go independent? I mean, I would assume there's going to be some independent games.
A lot of talks on that too, yeah. It'll be interesting.
Scrambling to do that.
Someone on Twitter, it was hilarious. The internet will just stay undefeated, but someone tweeted like, apparently COVID is not contagious in non-conference games or something like that.
Exactly, yeah.
I was dying. It's hilarious.
But like BYU's lost like 5 games. They're down to 7 games because they're an independent.
Yeah.
Do they schedule home and home in the season with Notre Dame because they're going to be down games, right? So it's so right now all I'm doing is working at Miramar College is my full-time job as the public information officer, and we've had a lot of challenges there too. We're tomorrow commencement is virtual. First time we've ever done a virtual commencement. And then everything's going to be online in the fall. And I can tell you as a college administrator, like everyone's going to, and I've been telling my daughter this too, is it's like, even though she's going to go to San Diego State, all the classes are going to be online. For some reason, they're going to give her the option to live there, and she's going to do it. She's going to go in a dorm. But in my anticipation is that she'll be back by October. And, we'll have a spike. Even the smallest spike, when you're talking about something state-run, is going to cancel the spring too. So I'm thinking that fall 2021 is when we're, probably going to see college athletics.
From college all the way down to like I have little kids. Like what they're doing, I mean, it's so just disappointing and disheartening to see that like kids aren't having a normal schooling session. They're having to go to, all this online crap. I mean, and you're really kind of disrupting, development time. And man, it's really disheartening to see that they're doing this.
Well, that's the great debate right now, right? Like you get kids back in school. And for those people, no matter what side you're on, I go walking almost every day at like 5 o'clock from Torrey Pines State Beach through Del Mar, right? And people say, I don't know, the kids, we can't have the kids in the classroom. And I'm like, but right now they're on the beach, all on top. What difference is that? I mean, and they're like right on top of each other for a mile and a half, playing spike ball and all this stuff and laying out. I'm like, well, what difference does it make if they're in the classroom? But I also understand the other side is, the teachers, and it's more about, you're going to get the teachers to support staff.
I understand that too. I mean, you got to look out for their health. They're the ones putting themselves at the greatest risk. I just look at the kids and I'm like, man, just growing up, like, you think of all the days of school, probably most of the ones I didn't want to go to. But
you had a good time.
But yeah, I mean, you got to see your friends. I mean,
exactly.
The thing now, these kids don't get to see their friends,
Except through this, like
through Zoom.
Right.
Yeah.
Online summer camps. Oh, and I heard that a couple weeks ago. That drove me insane. I was like, online summer camps? So
what are you gonna Zoom jumping jacks or what?
Yeah, like you're gonna ship the arts and crafts stuff to every single person so they make it together? Like, what's going on?
Water balloon fight over Zoom?
Well, I saw a high school wrestling team out there yesterday. I mean, there are people on the beach. I mean, like the teams are just on the beach. They're like,
there's a ton here. There's some,
which I'm sure is completely illegal, but they're all out there.
If the coach isn't there,
I'm like, whether you like Gavin Newsom or not, I would never be the one to publicly say like you might have to close down the beaches because everyone will kill me. But they have to close down the beaches too. To get the kids, away from each other, because I sound like the old man.
Yeah. I have a question for you.
Yes.
This is my last question. I haven't gotten to play when Vin Scully could call games was one of the coolest things. And, I have a story that, my most memorable story with Vin, I didn't know if you had anything with him or a story you'd like to tell. I mean, someone that was so big in the industry. I mean, my personal story was we used to have church on Sunday where priests would come in. Well, Vin used to do all the readings. So when you go to Dodger Stadium.
Well, yeah, that's right. He's very Catholic, yeah.
I would go to church every Sunday if he did the readings. It was the most unbelievable. That was like
a letter from Paul to the apostles.
Oh my God! It was the coolest thing.
Farmer John.
I mean, out of all this stuff, like, it was so like cool as as a player to hear him talk about, he's from Santa Ana, modern day kid, blah, blah. But when I heard and he was doing the readings for Mass, I was like, dude, this is by far the coolest thing I've had.
Yeah, I bet. He was always the one, like I never ever get starstruck, but he would be the only guy I would get starstruck about. And I've got a couple of photos with him, and we've talked a few times. I talked like half a dozen times, and he had that story, where he told us, at the urinal, hey man, make sure you let everyone know about a no-hitter. But I got to know he had his right-hand man that would do all the stories and all the stats and everything. Is a guy that still does. I can't remember his name because it's been about a year since I worked with him. But he'll do a lot of our stats when I do West Coast Conference basketball. So I got to know him pretty well, and he would tell some good stories and stuff. But he's the only guy. The first time I ever met Scully too, I had like dropped my wallet, and he was like, "Young man," and I'm like,
"Is that God?"
Yeah.
Oh, this is great. It's everything. I don't care. I'll go get my license. I'll stand in line for 6 hours just to hear you say, "Young man."
That's what it sounded like when I was listening to him do the readings. I was like, God is talking to us right now.
Yeah.
It's the coolest thing in the world.
Hit me different.
Yeah, he'd be the only one. Everyone else, I'd be like, it's like,
yeah.
Like for instance, when I was in Tucson, Michael Jordan was in the Arizona Fall League. So I had a couple of times where you just come down and it would just be me and him, because the media, excitement kind of wore off after a couple of weeks, right? And then he's hitting $174 in the Arizona Fall League. Who cares, right? So we would have some one-on-ones. And there was one big moment where he just happened to get up to bat in Tucson when we were going live on the CBS, the local CBS News. And that I got to call that play-by-play. And I think he got a base hit out of it, so it was cool. And it went Nashville, all that stuff. So that was kind of cool, but never in awe of him. But it was, for some reason, Scully was always one that I was like, and he couldn't have been nice. Couldn't have been nicer. Now,
nicer.
Wouldn't know my name or anything like that.
When they had him do the first pitch in the World Series a couple years ago, oh my God, that was like one of the few moments that I got like that chill moment where it's like, oh wow, like that hit me deep. That was really cool.
And we know how much you love the Dodgers too, so that's.
I know that's why I say that very loosely. Like, well,
just yesterday as I was coming back from walking at the beach where I saw the kids, an Elton John song came on, and I was like, you know what? There can't be anyone in the world that hates Elton John. I'm like, let me try and think who would have close to 100% approval rating, and I came up with Elton John and Vin Scully. And even Jesus, look, I'm a Catholic guy. Like, he didn't even have 100%. He didn't have 100% approval rating, right?
That's a short list.
Right up there, man.
Yeah. Wow.
Right up there.
Yeah, I agree. No, that's awesome. You even had the chance to get some photos and talk with him. I'm sure even he would make you feel like he would remember your name, even though. That's the coolest part.
Yeah.
So
he was a very nice man, or is still a very nice man.
Yeah. Yep. Anything else? G, you have anything else, or before we wrap up?
I was going to ask, just to kind of close it out here. When you think of your career, what is the way that you want people to, remember your calls and your voice and how you do your play-by-play?
Sort of.
Yeah, your legacy. Yeah.
You know what? The sad part is I don't think anyone is going to, because I've never been able to land that full-time job. You know what I mean? I've never been anywhere.
Yeah, I hate to cut you off, but I have to say Mario Impemba, he wasn't forever the Angels guy, but I remember listening to Mario Impemba.
Right, I remember Mario Impemba.
Because at the time,
absolutely.
At the time he had a cool name, so you gravitate towards that. But like, you know what I mean? It was you can still touch even if you're a fill-in guy or you remember a particular call or something,
Yeah,
you don't win an Emmy for nothing.
Nowadays.
Yeah.
Especially because think about all the broadcasts we just do on E3 for UCSD, right? We do like almost everything. That's like 195 broadcasts. Back in the day, there was like, one Saturday afternoon game. The Angels only did 40 games on TV, and the Dodgers didn't, maybe did 60 of them. And so there's so much more choice now that and you can listen in different languages and on different, different calls and everything. So I'm not sure if anyone can make an impact like they used to, unless you're like a big national guy. And then I've never been the local. That's all I've ever wanted to be, was the local guy somewhere. But
hey, that can be your legacy, though.
Hey, you've made your mark in San Diego. That's for dang sure.
Well, yeah. I think I'll look back and I'll be like, oh God, I had all these cool moments. But at the end of the day, I still have to stand at the end of the line at Panera in the morning for coffee. No one's saying, "Here you go, Mr. Quis." I love that call, Tritons versus Stanislaus State. Wow.
Hey, next time I see you, I'm getting you a Panera, and I'm gonna hand it to you.
Oh, sure. That is awesome. Well, shoot, Steve, thank you so much for joining us, taking the time.
I'm glad we could share our hats, man. I got 3.
Yeah, look at the tie. That's awesome. Tie it all together.
I collected about 300 of them, and my rule is I have to go to the game to get them. So
that's awesome.
I've been to 300.
Not the best at the math, but that's probably 300 games then, huh?
It's Give or take. Back to when the San Bernardino Spirit played in Fiesolini Field with Ken Griffey Jr. as their center.
300 games. That is awesome.
Pretty cool to see all those minor league stadiums and everything too. It's an experience.
Yeah, nowadays they're all the same, right? They're all cookie cutters now. You can't even really tell. But back then they had a lot of charm, and you can probably remember a lot of the charming places you played at. So, just got one in Missoula, Montana the other day. So that's cool.
Oh, cool.
That's awesome. Well, shoot, there you have it. ESPN broadcaster Steve Quis, thank you again. Hope to see you at REMAC and hear those wonderful calls very soon, man.
Hope to see you November 10th, man. It's like 5 months away. Let's go.
Yeah, let's do it. But, all right, man.
Enjoy,
Steve.
Thanks again.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
See ya. So that finishes up the interview with two-time Emmy Award winner and ESPN broadcaster, former voice of the Padres and Angels, Steve Quis. A heck of a conversation with an awesome guy that, I kind of knew him career-wise, and he would chat and be, Steve, but it was really cool to kind of see him open up like that and his personality come out right away. We didn't even talk about him going to get his Senator's hat and how just right from the beginning that whole thing kind of came full circle like that, which was freaking sweet.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
But so many things to touch on. We'll dive in here in the wrap-up of the interview. First and foremost, we mentioned two-time Emmy winner, one of those being the 479th save from Trevor Hoffman, record-setting save, talking about that moment. And this is a field you can't script it. You can have everything set up, ready to go, be dialed in, and the game goes a complete different direction or whatever. So it was cool to kind of hear him say he maybe had like a bullet point or two that he wanted to say, and then just let the moment take over and his talents do the rest. And especially filling in. I mean, the guy, he wasn't even, scheduled for that game, trying to figure out and hoping he might have a chance to do it. And then he gets the chance to do it with a fellow Wildcat, setting the record in Trevor Hoffman. I thought that was freaking sweet. Coming from a fellow broadcaster.
Yeah, and he had that personal connection with him too, with the school, and I love that he alluded to that in the call, and that the fact that he was able to do that, but have those connections with so many others in the business, and his stories about Matt Vasgersian and his quote unquote twin voice filling in, and his stories talking about that, and their boss not even knowing that one was doing the other, I thought was hilarious. But on top of that, just working with a legend, working with Tony Gwynn and doing the versatility of sports. I mean, this guy's a true pro, and think of the stories that we could have talked about of just him and Tony, maybe hanging out, going to dinner, and then carrying those conversations into the game and talking about baseball and the knowledge on baseball. And I know Tony has had a pretty good basketball game too. So I'm sure that those conversations were pretty entertaining as well. But Vin Scully, I mean, a lot of people get to meet Vin Scully, and
not at the urinal though.
No, exactly. That's my point. Like, but they're all, they're pretty unique situations. I don't think that gets more unique and personal than that at all. And taking his few tidbits from Vin and his handful of conversations, that goes a long way with him. And you could see it when he was talking about it. And I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the Vin Scully thing for me was awesome. It's just first time I got to go to Mass at Dodger Stadium, like I talked about in the interview. I mean, being able to listen to him do the readings, like, was literally like God doing the readings. The voice that just like, man, I would never skip church if I could hear this every Sunday. As bad as that sounds,
my
it's
iPad,
like, oh man, it was awesome. It was the coolest thing in the world. So to hear him have stories about like this legend just giving him tips, that would just be like, that's like a Hall of Famer giving you a tip on how, what he does when he hits or what he does, on any given thing. So
and stuff.
Yeah, it was really cool. But what stood out to me about Steve too was when he was talking about, kind of having to be sensitive about what he has to say because he has to be aware of the families. And I understand that because it's very easy to get pissed off at those guys when they're bashing you. Good, if unless you're a once-in-a-lifetime type of player and you've been the franchise guy, they're not going to say anything bad about you. But good, bad, whatever's going on, they're going to, for the most part, they kind of change like fans do. They'll get on you when you're not playing well. And so to hear him say, I had to keep in mind that these guys had kids, they had wives, they had parents, and when they were doing something bad, I couldn't bash them because of the simple fact that they had a family to go home to, and it's not right for them to, for their kids and families to have to hear, the ridicule. So I thought that was really cool to hear somebody say that, because not too many guys in that industry could give two shits about that.
For sure. And dude, it's so hard I think he mentioned, it may have been Vin, another piece of advice from Vin Scully, but I think it was, not becoming best friends with the players.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's keeping that emotion aside, but it's so hard to get wrapped up, and you got to figure it's so hard for these teams that are struggling and their announcers that you're with them every day, all 162 games. You are watching the struggle. You are going to get over it.
He was with the Padres.
You're going to get over it at some point. You know what I mean? At some point, you're going to say something. You just, unfortunately, a fan can let it go sometimes. You say one thing, you might not even think about it, but you let it out, and now it's turned into a complete mess. And it was just
everyone
funny.
Has a mom. Everyone has a mom, and a protective one at that, I'm sure.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. And it was just cool to hear him, talk about that and mention it, and to find that happy medium along the way. But there was just so many cool things throughout that conversation. I'm not sure if you guys have anything else here before we wrap it up, but just a very entertaining conversation with Steve for sure.
Well, I hope.
Go for it, Danny.
All right, so I was just going to say, I hope once sports get back in line here, and I hope he gets some good gigs. And I know he was talking about getting football, but I would love to have him back on and just catch up on what he's doing, and just have some more conversations and break down even further. Maybe go into one of his years and break it down that way, and just talk about maybe those tough times with the Padres or the Angels, or the good times too. I'm looking forward to the next round.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to have him on again, talk to him, and just kind of get more in depth about the stuff that he's done, because it sat well with me that he was considerate of the players and their families, and for me that sits really well, because there's a famous White Sox announcer who didn't have any laws, and he could do whatever he wanted. I'm sure he tended to crush people. And even though having played there, we would sit back and listen to the announcer and just crack up.
Long time he was able to do that.
Oh God. And he crushing people. As an opposing player, I mean, he did funny stuff for the White Sox and against his own guy, but boy, I mean, it would be tough to be in a slump with him calling games. I mean, it would just be.
Well, shoot, Danny, like in the minor leagues, I kind of got a taste of it. But how about like in the big leagues? Are announcers talked about? Like, is that
oh,
dude,
yeah.
Did you hear what Seth fucking said about you? You know what I mean? Like, is that a thing?
100% guys say, we talk.
They pay attention.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Well, look what happened with David Price.
New York has one.
Yeah, New York
got one.
Yeah.
Mets got one that's got that, he is not afraid, because he's a former player. He is not afraid to go in and bash anybody who's playing. And, he bashed me before and ended up apologizing, because I think he realized it wasn't right what he said about me. But, I think when it comes to the former players, sometimes they think, well, I was a former player. I can say whatever I want. I can relate. I get that, but you got to remember, there's families out there, and
you're on a platform that's going to a lot.
Yeah,
of people.
You're on a platform where everyone's listening to. You can't just sit and bash everybody. You got to be able to be truthful. Now, there's a difference between being truthful and being just bashing guys. Just what the hell is he doing? I'm sick of watching this shit. Like, you can't do that to guys. You got to be truthful, but you can't do that. I feel like your own guy has to pump you up as much as possible, even when you're struggling. Try to look at the positive and be like, hey, he's been big for us for so many times. He's struggling right now, but, we trust him.
Yeah, it shouldn't be that hard, but, man, those emotions can sometimes just – hey, they're human too. He woke up
100%.
He woke up on the wrong side of the bed, just like we all have plenty of times. But like you said, there's a time and place and a way to go about it, and you hope, at that level that guys can kind of control that.
But like you said, they're human too. They wake up on the wrong side of the bed. They have bad days. You don't know what's going on in their personal life, and something happens, and they've already pissed off, and they've seen the same guy make 3 errors for 3 days in a row, and it's like, Jesus Christ, I'm sick of this shit. I can't take it anymore.
Yeah,
I get it.
Yeah, no, I was just curious about that because of just it being on.
Yes, the Harrisburg guys were talking shit on you. That little Seth, that little son of a bitch.
For sure. They
were gonna get him when he gets on the bus next time. We're gonna whoop his ass.
They weren't afraid to let me know. But I appreciate that, But no, I learned a lot of stuff. Just in my little stint there in Harrisburg, and I know we had talked. We actually haven't brought it up about the no-hitter thing. Another kind of lesson that he learned along the way, and for me, that was something I learned this past minor league year. Was I didn't know what to do. It was my first solo call, 9-inning call, Harrisburg against the Rumble Ponies, and
solid.
I just couldn't. You know what I mean? Like fortunate, my boss Terry Byram, who's been doing it forever, kind of was able to coach me along the way, shooting me texts, and he was handling some again Wi-Fi issues and internet issues and some technical side things, and I got to fill in and do all 9 innings and called my first freaking no-hitter. But he brought up a great point. If you turn on the game and on the radio and the announcer just casual, just 4-0 here at the ballpark, like you're not gonna maybe stay on, or you may turn it off, and you may have missed history, you may have missed something happening, or anything like that, to where Vin Scully, I think it was, bringing up like, hey man, there's magic happening here at Chavez Ravine. Like if you're not doing anything tonight, I suggest you get yourself comfortable, and we're making this happen together. You know what I mean? And it was really cool to kind of hear, again, just a guy with a little bit of credibility, as in Vin Scully, just talking to our guest, Steve Quis. So it was awesome stuff.
Yes, sir.
So
I agree.
That does it. Episode 8 now in the books. Be sure to join us next week, episode 9 here of the Connected by Scenes podcast. A reminder, you can find us on Instagram at CBS_podcast, Twitter at CBS Pods, and you can catch all episodes on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts. Rate us, review us. Please, we appreciate everything everyone has done. The reviews being posted, the ratings, it's awesome and exciting for us. I mean, shoot, it makes me want to keep putting out episodes, honestly. But a reminder, also check out full-length videos on YouTube of the complete interview. Subscribe to our page. But that does it, fellas. We'll be back next week for episode 9. Danny, Garrett, I'm Seth. We'll catch y'all on the flip side. Peace.
And everyone in the ballpark will turn their attention to the center field gate that will swing open, and take a listen. See history this afternoon at Petco Park. Trevor Hoffman, 478 career saves, 3 outs away from being the all-time leader in Major League Baseball history with 479 outs. Got him! 2 outs away. First things first. 3-2 on Batista. See ya! Blew the cheese right past him. The heck with a changeup. Great fastball. He's 1 out away. to third. Backhanded by the shortstop. Blum got a hurry. Got him! Yes! 479! Trevor Hoffman has become the all-time saves leader in Major League Baseball history, and they're all chasing him.